What is up, guys? My name is Lex. Welcome back to the vlog. First hand we're going to go over here. I have ace queen offsuit in the small blind. There's two limps for $5. Middle position makes it 30. Folds all the way back over to me, and I decide to put in a 3-bet. I raise it here to $140. At a position I want to be going pretty big here. Folds all the way back over to the middle position player who makes the call. Heads up to our first flop in a 3-bet pot on a Saturday night, which comes out 3-5-3 rainbow. And on this board, I should have the range advantage. I don't expect my opponent to be raising many 3x hands from middle position and then calling a 3-bet. I think I can have a lot of overpairs here that are bigger than his overpairs. So I start with a C-bet bluff of $125, looking to continue to bet on most turn cards. He ends up making the call, which doesn't surprise me. Going to the turn, which is a 5, double pairing the board, and this really isn't the best card to continue to bluff on, so I decide to check. My opponent bets big this time. He makes a $300 bet, and I don't think I can check call here with ace high, so I just let this one go. In this next hand, there's a later position post for $5. I have king nine of spades from under the gun plus 2. I decide to raise to $30, and only he makes the call, so we're heads up to the flop, which comes out ace high with a backdoor flush draw. I decide to bet $40, and my opponent calls. The turn card is a great card to continue to bluff. It's the 5 of hearts, now giving us a flush draw. I don't expect my opponent to have many 5s calling on the flop, so I continue to bet here for $100, looking to bet most rivers, but it is not going to come to that. He ends up folding. We take down this pot. After this hand, a pretty well-known action player in Dallas sits down at the table and wants to play 2-5 with a mandatory $10 straddle, which sounds good to me. So this next hand, there's a straddle on, 2 calls. I have ace, queen of hearts, a great premium-looking hand here in the hijack position, make it $60. He ends up calling in the cutoff before the small blind puts in a 3-bet. The small blind re-raises to $225. I glance over at his stack, and it looks like he has about $400 remaining, so I think I'm going to get this one all in. But before I do that, I actually see a $1,000 chip in front of his other chips, so he has about $1,700 to start the hand. I think I could 4-bet here or try to get it all in given the fact that it is a straddle pot, but against this particular player, I think a call is good, and it'll allow the action player to come in as well. So I end up making the call. Even though I am out of position, I think it is definitely beneficial to be playing hands with the action player. He has about $4,000 in his stack, so we're going 3 ways to the flop here. The board comes out queen high. We flop top pair, top kicker, but there are 2 diamonds on the board. This could be a problematic board if the small blind has an overpair like kings and aces. However, I am not going to be folding to his bet here. He c-bets $225. I make the call, and the cutoff snap calls as well. The pot is getting pretty big so far. When the cutoff action player snap calls this bet, he can have a wide range of hands, maybe some flush draws, some 9x hands, or even like the ace or king of diamonds looking to go runner diamonds. So when the turn card comes the deuce of diamonds, now bringing 3 diamonds on the board, and the small blind checks to me, I have a decision whether I want to check or bet. This is a very tricky spot here, given the fact that we are 3 ways in a big bloated pot and I just have 1 pair and I don't have a diamond. I decide to pot control here and check. I can also give the cutoff player, the action player, a little room to bluff if he wants to as well. The cutoff player goes into the tank and does decide to bet, and he bets big, $675. The small blind very quickly folds, which is good for me. If the small blind called, I really don't know what I would do here with my top pair, top kicker, but now I have to decide, should I fold or call? And given this player type, he is definitely a bluffer. Sometimes he will get out of line and put in some big bets with nothing, so I decide to make the call here. With over $2,800 in the middle now, I want to reevaluate and see what happens on the river. Depending on what it is, the dealer collects our chips and puts them in the middle of a massive pot, going to the last card here, which is the king of hearts. I play and flow and check over to the cutoff player. I have about $2,700 left in my stack, and the cutoff player does cover me, so if he goes all in here, he will be putting me into a terrible, nasty spot. He ends up tanking for what seems like forever, 1 to 2 minutes, and finally decides to make a decision.
I give up.
I have a queen. I have a queen. I don't know, I might fold. Jack Changus,
I had a monster hand.
ace of diamonds or something.
Everything. All right.
Yeah. The cutoff player ultimately decides to check it back. He says he gives up, which is good for me. We end up taking down this pot with ace queen. Not really sure what I would do if he put in a big bet there on the river, but I'm glad it didn't come to that. We are running decent so far now, up about $1,500. We sit down with the 5-10 table with about $5,500 in our stack, and there is a ton of money on this table. They're doing some straddles as well, so let's run good. Let's win some big pots. Let's get into the action. playing 8-handed now with an under the gun straddle to $20. I have ace jack offsuit from under the gun +1 and raised to $75. This is definitely the bottom of my early position raising range. I get a call from middle position and then a call from the button, so 3 ways to the flop. King 7-4, I think I can be c-betting on this board, but given the fact that I'm up against some sticky players, I decide to check my ace high, and the action checks all the way around. The turn card is a 6, I check again, and now the middle position player puts out a bet, the button calls, and we fold. Just a quick reminder, if you're in Texas on December 1st, come out to San Antonio Rounders Card Club. I'm having my first meetup game starting at 6 p.m. there. Next up, I am in the small blind with Queen Jack of Diamonds, a beautiful hand. Decide to call a $40 raise. We go 4 ways to the flop, which comes out pretty great when you're holding the Queen Jack of Diamonds. Ace, King, 10, 2 clubs. We flop the nuts, the best hand possible. I check, and unfortunately the action checks all the way around. The turn is the 3 of spades. We still have the best hand possible, but now there's 2 flush draws on the board. I decide to bet here $150, almost pot size, and I actually think I could be going a little bit bigger, maybe $175 or even $200. I don't think anybody's going to be folding a flush draw on this board. I bet $150, the early position limper makes a call, and the other players end up folding. When this player just calls my $150 bet, I put him mostly on a spade or a club flush draw, so whenever the dealer collects the chips and puts out the last card, which is the 7 of clubs, bringing in the flush, it's a pretty bad card now. I go back and forth whether I want to check or bet, and ultimately I decide to check, looking to most likely check call, but he instantly checks back. I show Queen Jack for a straight, and he shows 2 pair with King 10. Very tilting hand there. We end up flopping the nut straight versus 2 pair, and we win the minimum. The river card really slowed us down, but I do think I could bet maybe $200 or $250 there, but either way, we end up taking down our first pot here at 5-10. I fold for about an hour before finally picking up a playable hand with Jack 10 suited on the button. There's a limp for $10. I raise to $50. The big blind calls, and the limper makes a call. Ace, Queen 4 with 1 heart. We flop a gut shot here and a backdoor flush draw on a board that should really smash my raising range, so I put out a c-bet of $60. The big blind makes a call and the other player folds. We are now heads up here to the turn, which is the 9 of hearts, giving us an open-ended straight draw and a flush draw. What a huge card for us. My opponent checks it over to me, and he has about $900 left in his stack, so I think this is a good spot to overbet here. I can put a lot of pressure on his Queen X hands and his weaker Ace X hands, so I bet big. I make it $300. The big blind looks over and confirms the $300 bet, and then pretty quickly makes the call, and I would expect him to just shove all in here with any 2 pair or set, so I put him on a weaker ace or possibly a Queen X with a flush draw hand, so we're looking to hit one of our outs here. Any king, any 8, any heart, going to the river, which is the 6 of clubs. We totally miss everything. Most of the time, I would just be giving up and checking back this river, but I don't think this opponent wants to put all of his money in here with just 1 pair. If he has a queen, he might fold. If he has a weaker ace, I'll put him in a tough spot. So I continue to bluff here. I go for the 3-barrel bluff with just jack high. I bet $1,000 putting them all in.
You win. How do I miss all that?
That did not go as planned. We miss all of our outs, and our opponent calls $590 on the river with ace 10. Whenever I take this line, normally I'm going to have top pair, top kicker, 2 pair, or a set, but this time he ends up making the right call, and he takes down this pot. The 5-10 table is not very good, so I end up switching back over to the 2-5-10 mandatory straddle game. There's one player of the game who recognized me earlier, said he likes the vlogs and he watches them sometimes, and that is definitely going to come into play in this next hand. The guy I just mentioned is in the hijack position. He open limps for $10, cutoff calls $10. I'm in the straddle with king, queen offsuit, make it $100, and only the hijack player makes the call. The board is ace, queen, 10 with 2 spades. We flop second pair, best kicker with a gut shot to a jack. I decide to c-bet small on this board just because it's going to hit my range way harder than it's going to hit his limp calling range. I make it $55. He makes an interesting face over at me and then decides to raise. There's a lot of things in this hand which helps influence my decision on the river. First off, he tries to raise to $200, but he only brings out $175. He doesn't verbalize the bet, so the dealer actually makes him only raise to $175. It felt very unconfident. It didn't make much sense either. He shouldn't be raising on this board hardly ever. If we look back to the pre-flop play, this particular player open limped the hijack, which he would never do with aces, queens, tens, ace queen, ace 10, or king jack, so he basically can never have a set, two pair, or a straight on this board, which means I'm most likely going to have the best hand. I don't think he's ever raising here with just a single pair ace. So with that being said, and the fact that he is a fan of the vlog, and maybe he's trying to make a move because he knows I'm recording, I decide to make the call and evaluate later on the turn, which comes off the 10 of spades, bringing in the flush draw and pairing the board. This card should be helping me a lot more than it can help him. I don't expect him to be raising a flush draw in position that often on this board, given the fact that it should be hitting my range a lot more than it hits his. So whenever he continues to bet here for $350, it just does not make any sense. I don't expect him to ever be betting an ace for this sizing, so whenever he bets this sizing, he's basically representing a king-high flush or a full house, and we've already determined from the pre-flop action it's pretty hard for him to have a full house, so I don't believe him. I think he's trying to make a move here for the vlog. His hand doesn't make too much sense, so I end up making the call, going to the last card, which is a total brick, and I end up checking it over to him. I could be in a very tough spot here depending on what kind of bet sizing my opponent decides to use. He tanks for a while, looks over at me, thinks about it for probably 45 seconds, and decides to bet $1,000. Whew, this is a tough spot. I got myself into a tough spot by calling this raise and then calling the turn bet, but I have to say it still doesn't make much sense. He's basically saying now he has a full house like ace 10, which I think is pretty unlikely. And he's also saying that he has a king-high flush. I also don't think if he had a flush, like let's say he has 8-9 of spades or 6-7 of spades, I don't think he would be taking this huge sizing, given the fact that I could have a bigger flush or I could have a full house. This is a pretty massive bet at a 2-5 game. $1,000 going in here on the river. I end up taking my time. I think about this one for a while.
Probably a pretty bad play. I don't know, man. I don't feel like you have anything.
I don't have anything.
I have a king and a queen.
That's it.
Thanks.
We make the call for $1,000 and he tells me we are good. He has nothing at all, which is kind of what I expected. We end up taking down this pot with second pair.
I made it. I made it, that's for sure.
You yourself is not going to be in it, just your hands. If that's, you know.
I don't care.
No one will know it's you.
I don't care if you put me in it.
Just your hands.
Now that my poker vlog is getting more popular, I'm going to have to get used to people really trying to put me in tough spots when they know I'm recording. Luckily, this time I made the right decision though. Last hand of the night, and we're going to play with the ladies. Pocket queens from middle position. I raised $240. The straddle is still on. There's a cutoff call. The big blind, the same player who just tried to bluff us for $1,000 on the river, makes the call as well. And the straddler makes the call. So 4 ways to the flop. King 5-6, no flush draw with an overcard to our pair. When it checks over to me, I decide to mix in a check here. Sometimes I could be betting small to try to get value from lower pocket pairs, straight draws, 5s or 6s, but this time I decide to check. The cutoff checks as well. The turn is a deuce. It checks to me again, and I decide to check again, just trying to get to showdown. And the river is another king, which is actually a really good card. The river being a king is a good card because it's less likely that one of my opponents has a king because there's 2 on the board and they're going to have one in their hand. Now the bluffer from the big blind bets out $50. The straddler calls, and I think this is a great spot to put in a value raise, especially because we have some history with each other. So I bump it up here. I raise to $250. Let's say the big blind call my raise with maybe pocket 8s or pocket 9s. He may call this $250 bet just because it doesn't make much sense, and he might think that I'm trying to steal the pot, which is why I make it 5x here. I'm really trying to look like I'm trying to steal it and trying to make it look like a bluff, so hopefully he will call with one of his 1-pair hands. However, that doesn't happen. The big blind doesn't call, doesn't fold. He puts in a re-raise to $1,400. The straddler quickly folds, and now the action's back on me.
Not a bluff this time.
I got a king. You got a
King
king
and a
too?
6 is good.
King and a 6? This guy on. Jeez.
You got some of your money back.
This guy over here.
Alright guys, that is it for this vlog. While I'm here in Dallas, why not go see a Dallas Mavericks basketball game? I'm not a big sports fan, but it was a ton of fun. The Mavericks were down early at halftime. They clawed all the way back and ended up winning, so it was super exciting. As for the session recap on Saturday night, kind of a swingy up and down session. Won that big pot with ace queen, then switched tables over to the 5, 10, 20. Couldn't get too much going. Kind of bluffed it off there with jack 10 of hearts, turning a straight flush draw, but then biggest hand of the night, king queen called a raise, called a bet on the turn, and then called a $1,000 bet on the river with just second pair. I just had a feeling, I had a hunch that I was good, and I was. Ended up booking a $1,200 win that night. So if you guys enjoy these videos, I would really appreciate if you like, subscribe, comment down below, helps the channel grow. And until next time, I'll see you.